Now, just to sum up, I always like to sort of get my guests, if they can, just to sort of summarize what they think are the key ingredients for people to go out and achieve their goals in life. Now, I think we've already touched on a bit of it, but could you just sort of try and encapsulate in a few words what you think are the key messages you'd like to leave with people that are wanting to go out and achieve their goals?
What I would say to your audience is trust yourself. And really coming back to that conversation we were having earlier about instinct, intuition. If there's all the data in the world in one direction, but something in you is saying something else, I think a key ingredient, not just to leading or succeeding, but like a key ingredient to doing something meaningful and different enough that you'll leave a mark is to be able to trust that and to listen to it.
Yeah. Welcome to Insights into Success, where with your host Paul Dodds, we hope to educate, inspire and motivate you to achieve your own personal success. We talk to guests from all around the world from a variety of walks of life to hear the realities of their own journey to success. What challenges have they faced? How have they coped with failure? And what have been the keys or will be the keys to their own success? In our Read to Succeed interviews, we talk books that have inspired our guests, and for some, they share their secrets to marketing success. Join us as we give you insights into success. Well, welcome to Insights into Success, where our special guest today is Anne Mallorie, who is an author and an executive coach. Now, I'm just wondering, Mallorie, if you could kick it off just by giving us a little bit of a background on yourself.
Yes, definitely. So I'm Anne Mallorie. I'm the founder and CEO of Guts and Grace, which is a women's embodied leadership school, and also author of the book by the same name. And in my work, I primarily specialize in helping leaders access the wisdom of their bodies so that they can lead with more purpose and presence, but also with more resilience. And I guess I'll just add that I've been doing this work for almost 20 years in some form, and I love the work that I do.
Yeah, I think loving what you do is so important, don't you? I mean, that's one of the things that does come up for me from time to time with the people I interview. Is I think one of the key ingredients to succeeding is loving what you do. Like if you are at a challenging point and you don't really like what you're doing, to my way of thinking, it's much easier just to quit. But if you love what you're doing, then you've got that passion to help get you through over that hump and carry on. Was that something that you would agree with?
Absolutely. I would say in my career, there have been so many moments where it would have been much easier to quit. And if I didn't love what I did, I would not still be doing it. I can promise you that 100%. But same thing, when I work with leaders, the passion or the care for something, either it's like I have a vision and I'm really stoked about it, or I just love the people that I serve, that really makes a lot of difference in terms of being able to hang when things get hard.
Yeah. Now, one thing I need to ask when I was reviewing the notes for this interview was that you became an executive coach at the very young age of 25, which is quite extraordinary. So I'm just wondering if you could share with us how did that come about at such a young age, and to what extent you might have had pushback from people when they realized how young you were and that you were, coaching them.
Yes, definitely. I do get asked that a lot. The beginning of my career was actually pretty magical. I grew up in a small town in Western Pennsylvania. I actually grew up in a steel mill town. And I went to the University of Michigan for undergrad. And that opened my eyes to a lot of different types of work or careers that just didn't exist in my hometown at all. So already I'm kind of off the map. What I got to do when I was undergrad was I got to facilitate intergroup dialogues. I got trained to do this as an undergrad to teach other students. And then I also got trained to facilitate essentially leadership training weekend workshops or week-long workshops that were focused on diversity. And I really fell in love with that work. And I had this sense that when I graduated, if somehow this could be the type of job that I did, then I would build a career around it. So when I graduated, I started to look at who was doing either intercultural leadership training or diversity kind of training. And mind you, this is about 20 years ago. So there just weren't a ton of people that had built their consultancies or who were really doing this type of work. Mythbuster, I would say, I also would kind of call them up or reach out and say, hey, do you have a job? Could I possibly work for you? And usually their reply would be like, I know it looks like we're a big company, but actually we're pretty small. It's kind of just me. I know I'm making it look like fancy, but behind the scenes, it's just me and we don't actually have a lot of work. So sorry, I can't hire you and I probably can't help you either. So it was kind of disappointing to try to get into the workforce and do the work that I had dreamed to do. I did get lucky though, because the founder of the Intergroup Dialogue program at my university around that time put out a post from a leadership development organization that was looking for someone to fill an intro level position. So it was a position that was going to be interviewing people for 360-degree feedback and also doing some other stuff around the office. And I was a little bit overqualified for the job, but I had this idea that it would be my way to get in the door. So I did get that job. I moved to California for that job, which I kind of wanted to do anyway. So it was a good magic. It made it possible. And then when I started working there pretty quickly, there were other opportunities to do other things since I was good at what I was doing. So about a year in, they said, well, do you want to try to coach people and see how that goes? And, it didn't take me very long to go from coaching, anybody who was coming to pretty senior level people, because most of our business was actually focused on working with executives and executive teams. So I got pretty well fast-tracked as a very young person to be able to be delivering a type of work that if I just tried to start on my own, I probably couldn't have done. Now, to speak to your second question, credibility, again, think 20 years ago. So we have clients all over the country. Our core product is basically a leadership development program that's 25 days of training where clients come to us, and then 360 feedback processes that happen throughout the year, and then executive coaching that's every other week. And at that point in time, given our clients weren't local, the coaching would happen by phone. We didn't have video conferencing that we were doing. So I would begin a relationship with a client by delivering feedback or interviewing everybody that they knew, and then giving them a bunch of feedback that they didn't want to hear or had never heard before, and helping them recenter and figure out how to make the most of it, and then begin the coaching process. And like 2 or 3 months in, we would then meet live in person at one of our events. And often they would say, whoa, I had no idea you were that young. So I just had a really good setup to be able to get to do very high level work because of the skill that I brought to it, without necessarily being seen or having to overcome credibility as a pretty young person who also looked extra young as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the fact that you were able to form the connection and do a lot of work before they met you was definitely an advantage. So you established your credibility. I do wonder if we were advanced a few years and we're as we are now and very accustomed to using, video conferencing, whether or not that may have made it harder for you, because they would have seen right from the get-go how young you were.
I don't know if I could have done it. I think I have a very unique story, both in terms of being in an organization where right away the people who were available to coach were really senior level people, but also in terms of the way the technology was at the time. So I feel very blessed about that. What did also, I think, work for me was that I had really high skill in essentially EQ. So really understanding what makes a human being tick. And a lot of the work we were doing was not traditional business training, but it was much more about that inner work. And so because I was really good at that and I could see through people really quickly and right away, and that became an asset for them to have an executive coach that could do that, that helped me do something that I might otherwise have not been able to do without more experience. Really, it was through my clients that I learned business and strategy and all of the other things that I now bring to the clients that I'm working with now 20 years later. But I was able to just leverage my core strengths in a way that made sense. And I would say to my clients at the time, I'm not an expert in business. You're the expert of your business, but I'm an expert in what makes people tick. And I can see what's going on behind the scenes here. So let's focus on that in the coaching process.
What fascinates me listening to you, and I just relate this to just people in general, when they look at others and what they achieve versus what they haven't achieved. And I think two things that sort of jump out to me about you is, one is being passionate about what you want to do, having a clear vision for what you want to do, and taking that first job with a mindset where it seems to me that you were, aside from what I've just described, also very open to looking for opportunities and seizing those opportunities, and obviously doing well at them, and then through that creating the career that you've got in front of you. And I just can't help but think that the part of the message in that is it comes down to the individual. You could have some other individual with similar qualifications to you that may not have ever seen that opportunity because they wouldn't have looked as hard as you. And had they got the opportunity, may not have evolved the way it has for you because of a different approach, and not maybe having that same ability to look laterally at the opportunity and find ways in which you can use that to grow yourself and grow, your goals in life.
Yeah, I believe, and it's really part of my methodology at Guts and Grace, I believe that we all have a natural instinct to grow, to expand, to kind of reach out for what is for us. I also think a lot of us are trained out of that at a pretty early age. And some of what we do in Guts and Grace is help our clients re-find a connection to that instinct if it doesn't feel like it's there, or it's hard to access, or they've done that in the past and it hasn't gone well. So there's some recovery to go through. But I would say one of maybe the unique things about me, not that I didn't have experiences that could have shut me down, but it's like that drive in me has always been very strong. And it led me to not only pursue that initial career, but also to find my way into the work I do today from what that was, which is there was a moment during my experience of being in that line of work that I started to feel burned out, and I started to have this sense that I needed something more to bring me either back in connection with my body or back in balance. And I would say it was a similar drive that had me go look for things that led me to embodied leadership and resilience techniques that then led me to develop the body of work that Guts and Grace is today.
And you're being in tune with yourself and having the instinct to do these things. Is it part of that? Is it you've taken the time to kind of step back from the hustle bustle every day and have moments, whether it be by meditating or some other means? Because it seems to me that so many people in the world, that you're so busy and your mind can be spinning around so much just on completing the day to day, that you're not taking the time out to kind of step back and see the bigger picture and maybe be in touch with both the environment and your own body. Is that what you see?
Well, a huge part of what I teach in Guts and Grace, which is, as I mentioned, a women's leadership body of work, is that when we create those opportunities to reconnect with our bodies, reconnect with our instincts, we do come back into relationship with ourselves in a way that we find more easily and or can pursue more easily the thread of what's called for, we could say in our purpose, or like what we actually gravitate toward and or what we need for our own resilience. So yes, 100% I agree with all of that. Was that what was operating when I very first started to reach for the work and build the work? Actually, no. Probably what was happening for me at that moment was much more of the other thing that sometimes drives my clients to really evolve, which is I was stuck, I was frustrated, I was fed up, and I was burned out. And so sometimes it's like we create the conditions and then we can follow the thread of something. And that's what I try to teach people to do proactively so that you don't have to wait for a crisis or something falling apart or to be fed up enough that you have to move out of, let's say, necessity or urgency. But I was probably moving a little more out of urgency early on. Good news is, again, it led me to people who were teaching embodiment, and then it led me to learn how to work with my own nervous system in a much more comprehensive and a much more proactive way so that I don't have to as often get to that point of burnout, urgency, things falling apart. I'm much more now trained to really use these types of practices of pausing, of meditation, of mindfulness, of body tracking, of embodiment practices to stay on course and then follow the thread in a less painful way.
And are people these days a lot more receptive to what you're talking about? And if so, is a lot of it, or some of it at least, to do with people's perception or recognition these days of the importance of our well-being for our overall health, and that, we can often get ourselves in a position where we might be striving to achieve something, but it's at a significant cost to our own personal well-being?
I think people are more open. I would say especially since 2020, people
Yeah,
are there's less convincing that the body matters, that
yeah,
if we don't take care of ourselves, we'll potentially burn. It's like we can't pretend anymore, or we choose to pretend less than we did maybe 10, 15 years ago.
yeah,
Do people still then not resist showing up for themselves in these ways? Everybody still resists. It's just that
yeah,
it's like it's trendy now. It's certainly trendy now to talk about well-being and resilience. It's also actually more trendy now than ever to talk about embodiment, and embodiment in leadership, and embodiment in the workplace. So there's more of an openness. But I think the path to walk to really live into something different in terms of what we do in our day-to-day lives is still the same ask of us, because most of our workplace cultures are still, inviting us to betray ourselves and burn out in all the ways that they still are.
yeah, yeah. And since, the whole COVID experience, have you noticed in America, do you think that people are reverting back to the way it was beforehand, or are they holding on to some of the lessons from COVID and are more aware of, not getting into that spiral of, you know, working endless hours just to keep up appearances to hopefully get that promotion that you want?
I think it varies. I was going to say something about America, like, us, we just want to be able to get ahead all the time fast. So if we can go back to the way it was, we'll try to do that, but that's not very nice. I mean, I think there is a certain amount of backslide that has happened, and I think there's also people who have created new habits, or like I said before, at least they have an awareness that there's a need for a different kind of habit that is
Yeah.
that's still available.
And so for you, you've refined what you do to the point of um, specifically targeting females. Tell me about that, how that came about. What was the motivation for you to specifically look at catering for women in the workplace?
Yeah, the truth is, I think my why focus on women? I think part of the truth is that I was really interested in this experience of working with the body, working with the whole self in leadership. And therefore, it made sense to work with women. One, because they were more open to these kinds of tools, these types of practices, this
Yeah,
technique and this approach. But also, two, because in a way, something different was more needed for my female clients. Most of the clients that I was working with that were women at the time were either the only woman on their team or maybe one of a few women on their team. And the traditional models of leadership were um, working, but only so much. And so there was like both a willingness to try something new, and then also like a need for something different that the embodied practices showed up inside of. And then there was a really beautiful alchemy that happened. Because that was so, and because I loved doing that type of work, it actually had me want to double down on learning how to serve women and how to leverage embodiment tools to support women in particular. So I think this combination of my love for embodiment and what doors that opened for me, and then bringing some of those tools to my clients, finding that when we brought them to women, their results really went off the charts. And with men, maybe it helped increase things a little, or they weren't that interested in it. So I find that embodiment and women just go really well together. And, and I'm really passionate about the potential that women, when they're bringing their full selves to work, can bring to both workplaces and what leadership is right now. I think often we have shaped ourselves to fit the way workplaces tend to work, which we all know isn't always awesome. And there are many things to be improved with how workplaces work. And so if we're leaning in this way that we're becoming more like men in our leadership, we may be missing our core superpowers or core things that we could be bringing. And that's different for every woman. I'm not saying it's the same or there's kind of a unified field of what it is to be feminine or what it is to be a woman in the workplace. But if we have left certain parts of ourselves out at the door, those might be the very parts of ourselves that could be ideal for changing workplace culture or for evolving something in business. And I'm just really interested in that conversation.
I can only imagine that it must be incredibly challenging to try and buck the norm, which in the workplace environment where it's tended to be very male dominated, and therefore the expectation is for people to behave in a male kind of way, which to me has seen some people, some females in senior positions almost morphing into men, it would seem, to succeed, which seems like the loss of identity and a real shame. But it must be a real challenge for you and for your clients, though, as women, to try and maintain your individuality in what has always been for so long such a male-dominated environment, particularly if they're goal-orientated and want to succeed. I mean, how do you break through what must be an incredibly challenging barrier?
It's the thing I'm most interested in. And, I would not say I have the right answer, but I would say I have cultivated some pretty good answers, which is what Guts and Grace is all about. One thing I will say is that the difference in industry varies quite a bit, right? How much, let's say, the feminine or more feminine aspects of ourselves are invited, allowed in leadership, elevated or uplifted in leadership is quite different in, maybe the nonprofit sector than the financial sector. Not across the board, but to some extent, right? So you're going to see different things in different industries. Certainly things are different now than they were 10 or 20 years ago. But across the board, I would say I would agree with you that there's still in dominant workplace culture, explicitly, or if not, then implicitly, some elevation of masculine values. We see, for example, grit. Everybody loves grit. Grit is great. The person who coined the word grit was one of my teachers, and people just love grit. And what it is it's like this ability to like push through and get something done. Yeah. And it takes a certain kind of presence and a certain persona to do that. And sometimes we need that skill. But the truth is there's other moments when actually quitting or surrendering or letting go or not doing that myself, but collaborating with someone else or fill in the blank, whatever the other move that might be a better move in this scenario might be. So my body of work and my book, Guts and Grace, is really all about learning about the potential for the balancing of those two energies versus choosing one over the other. There's a concept called practical wisdom, which really is alive in the field of psychology, but dates all the way back to Aristotle. And it's essentially the idea of the golden mean, meaning sometimes you need one and sometimes you need the other. And if you're over leveraged in one, the other might be where your growth is. So when I work with women who have spent a lot of time in more masculine dominant business type organizations, often there's an over leveraged of the grit side, the gut side, the masculine side, the something, because it's how I had to get ahead. And it worked well, or it works until I burn out, or it worked until a certain moment in my career. And then suddenly I'm hitting a ceiling, or I feel like I'm at a plateau and I'm doing that more and it's not actually getting me anywhere. So the invitation in my body of work is really to learn about this other side, look at the ways maybe you've sold out on it, and what is it even about? I call it grace, but it can point to many different things. It's really just the other side of the polarity of yang and yin, if you will. Hard and soft, of fill in the blank, masculine and feminine. And the truth is we need both, and we need them at different times in different amounts and different ways. And then each of our unique signature as leaders will be some combination of those things, if we don't try to be a certain stereotype of what we think leadership is. And that's where I think we lose ourselves, that we look around and go, this is what seems to be working, but it may not actually work for you, or it may only work for you to a certain point. And then it's really coming into your own expression, which is an alchemy of many different things.
Yeah. It's interesting when talking as you were talking there, I was just thinking about like in the whole sort of entrepreneurial world, often the messaging is in order to succeed, you can't quit. You've got to push through and you can't quit. And so then you have that, but then the reality is through experience, there's sometimes you could be, to use an old expression, flogging a dead horse. You could be doing something that literally is, you don't quit. If you don't quit on it, you're never going to achieve what you want to achieve. So it's trying to find that balance in life, and developing, like, you were saying before, your intuition. So yeah, you got the grit, so you push through, but then also listening to your body and that, and knowing that sometimes, okay, this isn't going to work. I'm not a quitter, but I'm actually taking a step back here and realizing that the smart thing to do here is actually to pull back and maybe go in another direction because this direction isn't working. And that's a real challenge to get that balance right.
Yeah, it's a life's work, really. I'll give you a couple of examples of where this matters, because one can listen to what you just said about, sometimes maybe you need to quit, but still be like, but really? So for example, right, like you said, if you're in a situation, I work with a lot of clients that are in a job that's not going anywhere. Maybe they hire me because they want to know if they should stay or they should go. And sometimes the answer is you should go. There's not actually something that's available for you here. But if you're not willing to do that, what you do is you set yourself up to stay on a plateau for a very long time. So continuing to grit your way through, or push toward getting the same results when there's no results to be had, or the returns are diminishing. It sounds obvious to say it, but how much do we really still hang on because we're so practiced at not wanting to quit? So that's one. Yeah. On the other hand, we talk about businesses. Right now, it's a really interesting time. A lot of industries are falling apart. A lot of things are falling apart at this moment, in the US in particular, for not amazing reasons, but also it's like, can we weather the down cycle of a business? So I have a couple of clients actually who are heads of innovation at their organizations, which means their task is to help their team stand up new products or bring new things to market. Some of those things aren't working and probably shouldn't be brought to market, but if we can't ever quit, we end up just, like, you have to learn both to be able to invent something, but also to bring something through a death cycle or to let something go. And for sure, we're not taught that as much in business school. So this is where, like, nature can teach us something, right? Every flower has a life cycle and then it goes on to the next thing.
It's a very challenging thing to just know when to quit, when is the time to maybe move on strategically, as opposed to you need to dig deep and keep pushing. You're almost there. And if you quit now, you're going to miss out. It's such a hard thing. And I think that you're being in tune with your gut is critical to knowing when that point is, if at all.
Yeah. And, you and I have talked about this in the past, but just to say, the gut, the intuition, like being able to trust your gut is, I would say, an embodied leadership skill. It is the capacity to be able to listen to something that's not mental, right? That's not data, but that is coming from somewhere else in your body, maybe your psyche, and also the capacity to not just shut down or shut it down when that intuition or that instinct comes online. So often these kinds of decisions, we could gather data all day long, but still our gut's like, no, something, or yes, right? It could be in the positive. I've had clients who are like gathering data against a decision, but like everything in their body is like, but somehow I still think we should. I'm like, okay, well, that's a useful piece of information.
So, I mean, you've got to become in tune with your gut, but you've also got to get to the point where you trust it as well. It's one thing to feel it, another to then act upon that feeling, isn't it?
Totally. I have had a client a while back, and she would have these amazing, she was a business, the CEO of a business, and she would have these amazing intuitions about the next thing that would help them to grow or scale or bring in what they needed to the business. And she was an interesting character. She had been the number 2 in this business for a long time. And she was 2 years into being the CEO after the founder had retired. And so there was a lot of there was big shoes to fill. And her relationship with her intuition was that it was very strong right away. She could feel this excitement about something, and she would start to talk about it, and it would get very animated. And then at some moment when the sensation would build enough and the idea would start to be formed, she would deflate in her physical presence. Her energy would drop, and she would say, I don't know. And she'd change the subject. And I'm like, wait a minute, what just happened? This is an embodiment. But this is the way that the stifling of our instinct or our natural tendency to know and to then move towards something and to feel the aliveness in something, to trust and intuition and to feel the building of the potential in it. When it's trained out of us early in our careers or early in our lives, then we actually have to do a little work to interrupt that training or to rebuild that capacity.
That connection, yeah. So tell me, how did it come about writing your book? How did that all unfold?
Guts and Grace was for sure a labor of love. And it was not a scientific endeavor, but much more of a body and intuitive endeavor. So the truth about my book, Guts and Grace, is that many of the pieces in it were written as small snippets to guide embodied practice that I was teaching clients at different points in time. So I had this practice of teaching something, writing a little bit about it, then giving that later to people to try on as a practice. And at some point in time, really, I had the intuition that there was a book there. And there was not only a book, but really like a methodology or a body of work. What actually happened was that I was scheduled to go to a retreat in a beautiful location on the coast of California. And I went, and kind of like my body said, don't go to any of the sessions, just write this book. And so essentially I bailed on everything. I found this like room in a part of the building that was being renovated, and I pulled together all of the puzzle pieces into the curriculum in about 48 hours. A few things changed, but not very many. And then when that was 15 years ago. And then I taught the work for a good number of years, which I still do in a year-long leadership development program. We have, online platform ways that we teach the course, audio, video, etc. But the actual book itself, it was almost like I didn't know if I was going to or needed to publish it. And then the year before the pandemic, so in 2019, it felt clear that it was time that it becomes something that was in writing, that was tangible, that someone could purchase, that really, if I got hit by a bus, it would still exist, that it lived on beyond me. And so at that point in time, I went back, and a lot of it came through results from embodied practice, but then I went back and pulled in the science that was relevant to what we were teaching. And in between there, I did a degree in positive psychology. So I kind of fleshed it out with more of the science, which all backed up the work very well. But it was really born of body and not of mind.
Right. And so for you, what does the future look like? Have you got plans for another book? I mean, what are your sort of goals over the next sort of few years?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So maybe another book. I don't have plans yet, but actually what we're currently doing is we're launching an app. So for sure, by the time folks are watching this podcast, the app will be available on any platform that you can download an app. There'll be free practices. There'll be a membership site. We'll be delivering our courses through that app. And it's kind of funny because I'm not much of a technologist. Like, I'm a little anti-technology. I was like the last person I knew to get a cell phone. But I also know that since my clients are busy women, being able to do something on your phone, grab a practice quickly, here's a 15-minute thing that you can do. Like, really the magic in Guts and Grace is that you can do a practice, and that practice interrupts or changes something in your life or in your day. And so I wanted to make that as accessible as possible. So the app at launch is actually we're up to this year. In addition to continue to build our community, we also do quite a few right now live retreats and events, which is something that I just love to do, is get people together and practice together.
Yeah. Yeah. So for you, obviously, it seems like the passion's still there. You're very much engaged in what you're doing and get a lot of enjoyment from it.
I do. I do. Especially live. I mean, this is great. We can talk about the body all day long, but if I can get 10 or 20 or 50 people in a room and we can actually
Yeah.
experience something through the body, it's just off the charts. So I really love what I do. And there's nothing like it. Really, it's like transformation, right? That somebody comes in, watches this podcast and leaves different, or that somebody comes into a room, has an experience and goes, wow, I can be different in my life, or somehow that opens a new door for me. I love, probably kind of addicted to the magic of that moment.
Yeah. Oh, good on you for that. I think that's so important. And I think it translates through when someone's passionate about what they're doing, it can't help but permeate everything they're doing. And then it's can be potentially quite infectious, But whereas if someone's just doing something and they're really going through the motions, it's you can see it and it just doesn't have the same power as what it would if someone really truly is engaged in what they're teaching.
Well, I've said before that if I didn't love what I did, I would have quit a long time ago, to speak about quitting, because it has
Yeah.
not been easy. Really, the path of guts and grace, the path of my work has been not standing up to power and or tradition, maybe kind of, and it probably will continue to be that, but to just be willing to hold my own clarity and center for something that has never really been popular, to be honest. It's always been a little bit countercultural, but that I know
Yeah.
is really powerful and gets amazing results. So it's like it asks something of me. So I have to be passionate or I wouldn't still be doing it.
And has that been your biggest challenge? Is that being, pushing back on sort of the social norms and that? Is that being the hardest thing for you?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, the even just the words, like to speak about somatics or to speak about embodiment or the body, early on in my work, first of all, embodied leadership, people didn't know what it was. For sure, the word somatics, which I just mostly don't use, but like I do somatic work. Now people kind of know what that is.
Yeah.
I actually had people tell me early on, like my early business coaches, when I finally started my own business, were like, don't use the word somatic. Many of them said, don't tell them you're going to do anything with the body. Like I had a whole website that was not very revealed in terms of most of what I did. And there was like an initial strategy, it was like tuck it in because people will be too resistant. And then when you get in the room and you give them an experience, they'll want more, which they usually do.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of early, business strategy where I was either encouraged to not totally talk about what I did because people wouldn't get it, which was probably true at the time. And or there were just like business mentors and coaches that didn't get what I did at all. As a young woman trying to get a new business off the ground, it wasn't the easiest.
Challenging.
Yeah, it's just like it's like continue, but it asked me to do what I'm asking people to do, which is to trust my own instincts, to keep coming back to myself, to like really leverage my own inner compass versus just replicate what's happening in the field. And to be very honest, I've done a lot of replicating. I've backtracked on that I've tried a lot of things
Yeah.
to finally have a brand, a business, a body of work that's really working and that people really understand. So I would say like getting understood even in the field has been a challenge. I would say I was probably a little or a lot ahead of my time.
Yeah.
COVID pandemic happens. Suddenly everybody's interested in embodiment. People are more aware of what their need for result, like things. It's like the market is catching up to what I do.
Yeah.
And now I'm kind of an OG in the space, which is weird because I'm not very old and I don't feel very old, but
Yeah.
I was definitely doing it before it was hard or before people knew what it was. So that's been a journey.
And let's hope it gets easier and easier. But
Maybe so.
particularly with what's going on at the moment, I think you're going to have some ongoing challenges, unfortunately, for a while. But hopefully we'll flush through that eventually. Now, just to sum up, I always like to sort of get my guests, if they can, just to sort of summarize what they think are the key ingredients for people to go out and achieve their goals in life. Now, I think we've already touched on a bit of it, but could you just sort of try and encapsulate in a few words what you think are the key messages you'd like to leave with people that are wanting to go out and achieve their goals?
You know, what I would say to your audience is trust yourself. And really coming back to that conversation we were having earlier about instinct, intuition. If there's all the data in the world in one direction, but something in you is saying something else, I think a key ingredient, not just to leading or succeeding, but like a key ingredient to doing something meaningful and different enough that you'll leave a mark is to be able to trust that and to listen to it.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is you also need to replenish. Like everyone talks about self-care, but like your body is a limited entity, and if you are not refilling it, refueling it, replenishing it, sleeping it, doing the thing, it's like animal things will unfortunately take the best leader and the best business down. So that's not even the majority of what I teach. But if you're like, what are the key ingredients? I'm like, that's like baseline. After that, we can talk about how to leverage your body for all kinds of other amazing things. But if it's not a baseline, you're going to lose the game.
Yeah, I so agree with that. If don't have your health, you've got nothing. And it's too easy for us to take it for granted. And we need to just step back and realize how important our health is and do things in order to try and protect it. Because, unfortunately, too many people leave it till it's too late, and then can be very sad.
And it's something you have a choice about right now.
Yes, exactly. Well, LeeAnn, I'm just conscious of time. It's been fantastic talking to you. And I think, I really love what you're doing, and I really support what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. And I know that men as well could benefit a lot, I think, from your teachings as well. Probably just not so good at being receptive to it, maybe, but definitely. Some are, yeah. So that's good. And hopefully with time, more will be as well. But look, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're super busy, so thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
And you've agreed to stay on for Read to Succeed, so we'll just do a quick recording of that shortly. But thank you again, and look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you so much.